You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Wolfpack fans? What's up, Syracuse Orange fans? Welcome to our special Locked On Crossover Thursday episode. As always, I'm Grayson Boone, joined by former Wolfpack defensive tackle Kenton Gibbs. And we're joined today by the host of Locked On Syracuse, Jackson Holzer. Jackson, how we doing?
Well, I'm doing well. How are you guys?
We're hanging in there.
Boo! I'm booing you, Jackson. Boo! You're being booed. Boo!
I'm already being booed. I haven't even said anything yet. That's okay.
Many folks that tune in to the weekly ACC squad episodes have probably been waiting for this crossover. In fact, I might just be winding these two up and letting them go. But big time matchup in the ACC on Saturday night. The Syracuse Orange make their way down to Raleigh, North Carolina. 8 p.m. game in Carter-Finley. Jackson, we're going to start asking you Syracuse questions, and then we'll flip it over to you so you can ask us NC State questions in the latter half. We'll jump right into it. Fran Brown, first-year head coach. He's gotten the Syracuse Orange off to a 4-1 start. Preseason, he'd never been a head coach before. What's the overall feel among Syracuse fans right now?
I would say the vibes are pretty high right now. I mean, it was very easy to get down after that week 3 loss to Stanford. They laid an egg on that Friday night. But you know what? This team, obviously, they beat Holy Cross. They took care of business. But then their next real test, you go on the road, you play a ranked opponent in UNLV, first time ranked in program history. And I know that was only a 3-point game in overtime, but Syracuse, they controlled that game from start to finish. Now, the special teams, they got to clean that up. But I would say overall, the vibes are really positive around the program now, higher than it's been in a long, long time for Syracuse. Because here's the thing with Fran Brown. We knew he could recruit. His recruiting with Syracuse since taking over is at a 20-year high for the program. That's not exaggeration. It's not hyperbole. You can go look up the numbers. The question is, can he coach? And so far, he's got this team at 4-1 and in good position. And this is a game. We're back returning to playing in the ACC right now. You want to contend for the ACC? It starts right now.
So let me ask you this. We know about the offense and how they pass the ball around and spread the ball around. We know Kyle McCord has been much better than many people, including myself, have expected so far. But what's an underrated part of this team? What's an underrated strength that not many people are talking about, that you, covering Syracuse as intimately as you do, can say, hey, this is something that presents a problem for many teams that for whatever reason, many are just not, saying, hey, this is the thing with Syracuse.
I think they have a lot of weapons, but it's more specifically what I want to get into is their running backs. In the preseason, this was something that was harping on. They got some really good running backs in their system right now, led by LeQuint Allen, an all-ACC second teamer last year. Then they also have Will Nixon, a Washington transfer, but he's banged up. He's probably not going to play this week against NC State. But it honestly, with all due respect to Will Nixon, doesn't really matter because they got this kid in Yassine Willis, a true freshman. He is a bowling ball, and he's got some wheels too. He just scored his first career college touchdown. So I don't think enough people talk about their running backs, and it's because of the fact that Kyle McCord is slinging it, and they throw the ball more than any other team in this country. But when they decide to run the ball, when they decide to commit to it, they are pretty good at it because they got some talented running backs back there.
I want to stick on Kyle McCord for just an additional second here. He's 4th in the country in passing yards. He's got over 1,800, tied for 2nd in the country with 17 pass touchdowns. How has Kyle McCord completely changed the Syracuse offense through 5 games?
It's like a breath of fresh air. This guy is going to shatter every single passing record in 1 year. He's going to shatter it. I think the record for passing touchdowns held by Ryan Nassib, it's like 25 or 26. He's on pace for 40. And that's not including a potential bowl game or hopefully maybe there's higher aspirations than even that. But really, it's a breath of fresh air because you have faith in him. Look, he's thrown a lot of interceptions so far this season, I think 6 through 5 games. But when you're throwing the ball 48 times per game, that's bound to happen. It's not like his interception rate is that high. It's only about 2.5%. That's not that bad. So overall, that is the best way to put it. It's like you got faith in him. It's a breath of fresh air. When he makes a mistake, every time he's made a mistake this season, he's bounced back basically on the next drive. That is what it is like with Kyle McCord right now.
So let me ask you this. Has Kyle McCord met, exceeded, fallen below your expectations for what you thought he'd be coming in?
Oh, he's exceeded by a mile. I mean, I had high expectations for him, higher than most, because I said, coming into the year, I was like, you don't become the Ohio State starting quarterback by accident. You don't put up those numbers at Ohio State by accident. So I was expecting him to come in and put up similar numbers to what he did at Ohio State. And I think every Syracuse fan, including myself, would have taken it. Instead, he's on pace to lead the country maybe in yards and touchdowns. I mean, he's been sensational. I really haven't had to complain about him really much at all. Has he thrown a couple picks? Yeah. But again, his interceptions rate's not really that high. He generally will make the right read. He generally will put the ball only where the receivers don't want to get it. And if you really dig into him a little bit more, he's very, very good at throwing that back shoulder route. Like, very good on it. They have taken advantage of that in a number of games this season. So, yeah, he's exceeded my expectations. I didn't even see this coming.
Earlier this week on Locked On Syracuse, you detailed a couple players that Syracuse is looking to get back into the rotation this weekend. Can you talk about who these players are and what kind of impact they may have Saturday night?
Sure. So the first one is Justice Ross Simmons. He is a Colorado State transfer. He had been dealing with a nagging hamstring injury at the end of training camp. It bled into the season. He did make his debut against Stanford, but I mean, he was on a Kodai Senga pitch count here. He was only playing like 10 snaps in that game. You barely saw him on the field. I mean, it actually kind of relates because it's like, he throws the ghost fork and he was basically a ghost on the field. You barely saw him. He didn't play against Holy Cross. And then again, he played against UNLV, but you didn't see him. You barely saw him on the field. But Fran Brown said in his press conference heading into this week that they expect him to be a full go. He was all Mountain West last season with Colorado State. This is a big-time wide receiver. They had to beat out a number of top programs for him. I expect him to be in the rotation at this receiving unit. On defense, they're getting back, hopefully, Marcellus Barnes, a true freshman, a 4-star, arguably their top commit in the 2024 cycle. He had been really good through 2 weeks. He was one of their Pro Football Focus highest graded defenders as a true freshman. And one of those games was against Georgia Tech. That's an ACC team. And you can make an argument he's the number one corner on the team. They certainly missed him for most of the Stanford game. That's where he got hurt, and they could have used him on Alec Iomanor on that last play. I'm not going to lie to you guys. So especially with a team like NC State and some of their pass catchers, it's going to be good to get him back. And the final one is Malachi James. He's a true freshman as well, a 3-star. He is the fastest person in maybe the history of New Jersey. You can look it up. His 100-meter time is insane. He doesn't really make much of a contribution on offense, but really where you can see him is in the kick return game. That is a place where Syracuse has struggled the last 2 weeks. So hopefully he's back. He's back returning kicks, and we're not stuck at the 10-yard line now every single time.
So we've talked about all of these good things with Syracuse and everything that is going in the right direction that you absolutely love. What concerns you about the Orange? What are the things that keep you up at night before game day saying, oh, man, if this happens, if we see this again, we may not get the result we want?
So Syracuse has been playing a number of mobile quarterbacks this season, and it's not really necessarily the mobility that's giving them trouble. It's the scheme that they like to run against these mobile quarterbacks, and it's why they're not really generating a lot of pressure, at least from the eye test. They do not generate a lot of pressure on the quarterback because they're rushing 3 and they're dropping 8 in coverage. And it kind of sounds counterintuitive, like, hey, if you're struggling in the secondary, why don't you put more players in the secondary? It hasn't really worked. Aside from one play against UNLV, and ironically, it was the biggest play on defense, it really has not worked out. And that is something that keeps me up at night because especially for this week against NC State going against a true freshman, I'm sure as a true freshman back there, 18, 19 years old, whatever CJ Bailey is, maybe 17 like Ryan Williams, I do not want to see a 300-pounder in my face. Fortunately for him, if you're going up against Syracuse, if they're rushing 3 and dropping 8, you're probably not going to see a 300-pounder in your face. So this team, it doesn't generate a lot of pass rush in part because of their scheming, particularly against mobile quarterbacks. They're rushing 3 and dropping 8. I would love if they can blitz this kid just a little bit more.
Last Syracuse question for you before we flip chairs. Give me 2 X factors on offense and 2 X factors on defense.
I will say I won't go LeQuint Allen because he is not really an X factor. So I'll go the backup in Yassine Willis. He is a power back. He can wear down a defense. He's someone who on 4th and 1, you want to hand it to him up the gut. It's like he's 230 pounds. This kid's got NFL size. He is an X factor in short yardage situations for this team. I would say the other one on offense is probably Justice Ross Simmons, the guy they're getting back. We haven't really seen him. We don't really know entirely what to expect, but if we can get his full potential, it's going to unlock even more weapons for this team passing wise. I mean, think about it with Syracuse right now with all their weapons. Another one, we'll take one, right? So those are my 2 on offense. On defense, I'll go King Joseph Edwards. He is a true freshman. He is a pass rusher. And I believe he's also second on the team in sacks with 3. And they all came in 1 quarter against Holy Cross. And the reason why I bring him up is because he really hasn't played a lot this season aside from those 4th quarter reps against Holy Cross. I want to see him play more. I said it last week. I'll say it again this week. This guy is a pass rusher. He's not an every down player right now. I don't think he has the size quite yet. But I want to see him coming off the edge. And the next one I'm going to say is Clarence Lewis because he is a corner for this team, a starting corner. You got Marcellus Barnes back now. That should alleviate pressure on him because I like him. He's a good player. He's been more than what I have expected. But now he's your number 2 corner. If he does his job as a number 2 corner with Marcellus Barnes with him on the other side, it's going to be very hard for these NC State pass catchers to get open.